Mitsubishi cars.
Guys, when jacking up a car, make sure you use a jack stand to protect yourself so you don't kill yourself, especially when you're alone like me. I'm alone all the time, and it's a good practice to put a jack stand underneath the car, even if you have jacks. Always use WD-40 when you have rusted bolts like I do here. Makes things easier to get loosened and get off so you don't bust your knuckles. Before pulling out the drive shaft, make sure you have a pan underneath the tail shaft housing of the transmission. It'll pick up all the fluids that are going to come out, and it'll prevent it from getting messy all over the ground, and then you can also put it back whenever you're done. There are a few types of drive shafts in the market. There's kind with epoxy injected fluid that's injected into the shaft. That's not this one. And there's a kind that's got the C-clip on the outside of the bearing cap. That's not this one. This application here has a C-clip behind the bearing cap, and that's what we're doing right here, removing it. Once you remove the C-clip, then you can finally bang the bearing out, or the bearing housing out of the U-joint. Okay, I'm sorry, the drive shaft. If you look closely at how this drive shaft is being banged out, I am hitting it in the collar area. This is the best way to remove the drive shaft. No heat needed. There's no press needed. You can do it all at home with just a, I have a vise and I also have a hammer, a small hammer. That's it. You don't really need a large hammer to do this. And the bearing will come right out. Just hit it at the collar that I showed you right here, and it'll come out on that side. Then you flip it around 180 degrees and you do it again on the other side. Also on the other part of the drive shaft, you do it on the collar the same way that I've done here, and you will see it's quite easy doing it this method versus using heat or versus using a press, which might damage the drive shaft. Before disassembling your drive shaft, as you see, I have an industrial marker. I'm marking where the orientation is so that when you put the drive shaft back together, you just line up the yellow lines that I put here, and it's much easier to get the drive shaft back together the way it came off. Mark the orientation on every piece or every part of this joint so you know how to put it back together the right way and everything goes back in its place. This is very important because if you don't, the drive shaft will go out of balance and then you'll have a big vibration going on the road because it's not the way it came from the factory. Even if the collar is flat like you see here, the drive shaft will still, or I'm sorry, the universal joint will still come off of the drive shaft if you hit it at the right place, and as you can see here, it comes off quite easily.
There's the problem. It's rusted. Totally rusted. They need to be replaced anyway.
I also put a number here, as you can see, to let you know later on when you put the drive shaft back together which section it is. If it's the first section, the middle section, or the last section, then you'll know. This is a Zerk fitting that you're going to put in the universal joint. Do not put white Teflon tape on these threads because it'll just screw things up. It might come out and into the bearing rollers and destroy the bearing later on. Do not use Teflon like some idiots do. Okay, and then just put it on snugly with an 8mm wrench or 5/16 depending on what country you're in. And then you're gonna need to hold these bearing caps carefully with your hands so they don't pop out while you're doing this, and you will be lubricating this U-joint later on. Double check the bearing caps to make sure there's no needle bearings on the inside where it's hitting up against the universal joint. Make sure all the needle bearings are on the edges, because if you don't, you will destroy the U-joint immediately after you drive it. Okay, so you have to check this very, very carefully before installation, and be careful while you're doing it. Now, when reinstalling the U-joint, we're going to be using a vise. It's less stress on the drive shaft to do it this way, and do not ever use a hammer to put this thing back together again, only a press of some type. And I don't normally use a big press because I'm afraid the press is going to bend the drive shaft or damage it, so I just use a vise, and as you can see here, it works just fine. In this area, I gently installed the C-clips to make sure that they're set in their grooves perfectly. Make sure they're bottomed out, okay, because if they're hanging out and loose, they might snap off. So I made sure that by hitting it with a hammer gently, and then you can be sure that it's installed correctly. Okay, this is where you line up all of your yellow orientation marks that you did earlier when you disassembled the drive shaft, so that way the drive shaft gets installed and put together correctly. Okay, it's time to torque the flange bolts. The flange bolts are torqued at 88 Newton meters or 65 pound-feet of torque. The vehicles Tacoma, Land Cruiser, Fortuner, and the Indonesian and Malaysia Kijang all have the same torque specs as the Tacoma from the US.
You're probably wondering why I didn't mark the back shaft. If you could look closely and get rid of the glare, it has a pink mark right here. It tells me where to put this, which has a pink mark right there. Do you see it? Wait a minute. See the pink mark? So this hole goes here. And that's it, that's a reference point. Don't forget to put lubricant on the tip of the drive shaft. You're going to be using lithium grease only, okay? Right here. Do not use any other kind of grease. It's bad for seals and it's bad for the oil inside the transmission. Lithium is safe. What this does is it protects the lip of the seal from getting damaged when you install the drive shaft, okay? Kind of like a pre-lubricant for the lubricant. The orientation of this drive shaft does not matter, it'll go in anyway. So just fit it right in. And it should slip right in. There's going to be a notch in here. You'll see it inside. You need to match it with a notch up there on the top. Okay, it's going to be like a space tooth. Most of them have it. And this one is not one of them, so it should go in anyway. You might need 2 people to do this because one it's pretty heavy. Just turn it slightly and it'll fall right in like that. It's done. I'm going to use one bolt like this to hold it up while you put the drive shaft up there. Okay, once it's up there, you put the other one in there. The second one. Don't do it too tight because you're going to be adjusting the drive shaft forward and backward to adjust it. Okay, now we're going to install the rear. Don't forget to keep your transmission in neutral so you can adjust the drive shaft either counterclockwise or clockwise as you're installing it in the rear. Then I have my bolts here, all of them. Make sure the pink mark in the rear is aligned properly so you have the correct orientation in the back. Alright guys, we're going to do the last last 2 bolts. And then we're out of here. Oop. And the carrier bolts too, carrier bearing.
differential area. Don't forget to torque it to 88 Newton meters or 65 pound-feet of torque.
Alright. Shit. I tell you, if you're not physically fit, you're screwed. You're doing this shit. It's heavy and it's awkward. Alright, we're going to do the center section bearing now and torque that down. We're done. We're going to go for a test drive. That's my favorite part. You know what I'm saying? Alright, fellas. We're going to torque these. The center section. Okay? And I have a paper with me. Okay, it's going to be 40.6 Newton meters, 41 or 30 foot-pounds. Pound-feet, okay? So I have a Newton meter torque wrench, which is retarded. I ordered the wrong one. And we're going to do 41 Newton meters, all right? Fortunately for us, all these bolts here, this one and these, everything you need is 14 millimeters, so you don't need a godly amount of freaking tools. Okay, after we're done with this, we're going to lubricate all of the U-joints, and I'll show you how to do that. And then we're done, all right? So, first let's get our little man. I'm going to snug these up good. Now, it's time to torque it. 41 Newton meters. Right, party people, time to torque this thing down. That's 1, 2, you double check, okay? Alright y'all, we're done. That's a wrap. Okay guys. Now we're going to go and lubricate the U-joints right now. You're going to need one of these tools, okay? It's a grease gun. It's a simple grease gun. This is what's going to be needed to lubricate or actually grease up the universal joints, alright? If we put our grease fitting there, you need to hold one with one hand. You're going to see grease coming out of the side right here. And that's when you know you're done, okay? You see it come out? Right there. Okay, that's greased up. Now we'll do the middle one. Okay, pay attention right here. You'll see grease come out. Okay, we're done with that. Now we have a noise in the front end. I gotta figure out what that is. Okay, here we go. I'm using GUT23 universal joint. Here are the other part numbers for this particular part. It's for a Toyota Fortuner, Toyota Land Cruiser, and I believe the Toyota Tacoma also uses the same unit. Alright party people, finally we got this thing done. Jesus Christ, it was a pain in the ass. Normally this U-joint stuff is pretty easy. I mean, it's just maybe 2 U-joints, that's it. But this one was 3 split type 2-piece drive shaft with a center carrier bearing. It was a pain in the butt. And plus, I had to go through 3 part stores to get 3 U-joints, which is not cool, dude. Not cool at all. Alright, so since I don't have field of vision, we're gonna go through this whole thing and take it for a test drive. I love the test drive part. Alright, so gonna see how things work out. There you go. We're gonna see how this thing feels. Normally the vibration happens, hold on, let me get it. Normally this vibration happens on acceleration, right at about, I don't know, 2,500 RPM, something like that. So we're gonna find out if that's still there. All right, here we go. Let's see what it feels like. Oh man, it's gone. I love it. You know the joy of a mechanic is when he fixes something, or actually when he diagnoses something, and then he's right the first time, and it eliminates the issue the first time. That is just like badass. I've been chasing this issue for quite a while now. It's been a while, so I wasn't sure if it was the motor mount or if it was the drive shaft. But signs were pointing it was a drive shaft because it would vibrate at a certain RPM range. And as you all know about centrifugal stuff, you know, that is like physics 101. When you hit a certain RPM, the vibrations will manifest itself at a certain RPM versus all RPMs. Okay, so I put it in neutral, and of course it didn't do anything. I accelerated from speed above 2,500 RPM, it didn't do anything. And then I accelerated from a standstill from 1,000 RPM up to 2,000 RPM, and it started manifesting itself from 2,000 RPM, and then it went away after it went to the next gear. So oh yeah, it's gone now, baby. This thing's smooth. I'm loving it. All right, guys, so that wraps up the video. And like I said, if you got any value at what you're watching and stuff like that, you like, share, and subscribe. I can't even speak right. Like, share, and subscribe for further videos. And do not forget to press the the notification bell, so you can get notified of any future videos. Oh, I got a good one for you. Let me show you real quick. If you all have this issue, see it, the dashboard blinking? All right, that issue is I've already found out what it was. It is, well, stay tuned for the video so you'll know when you get an answer. All right, I also have another squeak. It's coming from the suspension somewhere. It's like a squeak. I don't think you guys can hear it. It's not loud yet, but I usually catch these issues before they get worse. And every time I hit a bump, I'm hearing a squeak. It's not happening with this thing in neutral either. Or I've also shut the engine down as I'm going down the road, and then when it hits a bump, I hear a squeak. So it's not the motor or any joint or bushing related issue. So has to be something in the suspension, and I've isolated that to the passenger side of the suspension, so I got to take the wheel off in the front and in the rear to figure out what it is. That's really loud. It's getting worse. All right, so there's a lot more things to do on this thing. This thing is not a new car. It's like a 2006 model. It's pretty old. Well, it's kind of old, I guess, and has a lot of issues. But once I fix all of the issues, this thing should be like in perfect shape. It was in perfect shape when I first got it, but this thing is being used a lot. It's been going back and forth to another island, so it's taking quite a beating. So like I said, all the old parts are starting to manifest themselves, and that's the issue with this thing at this time. All right, so anyway, I'm gonna sign off now, guys. I'll see you in the next video. BBG out.